You're listening to The Unsafe Bible with Pastor Ken Brown.
When we get challenged like Daniel is, where's our faith going to be? Are we going to be in Romans 8:28? I check this every day to make sure it's still there. We know that all those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to His purpose. I check that every day to make sure it's still there. Really? You love me? Yep. Everything that happens in your life is because you're called to His purpose and I love you. Okay. Even with a bloodthirsty despot, Lord? Yeah, even with a bloodthirsty despot.
In your walk with Christ, when you experience difficult times, do you always turn to God? Do you always seek after Him, even when you're at your worst? Or do you try to fix everything on your own? In today's message, Pastor Ken wants you to know that you need to always go to the Lord first in your times of need, even when it seems like He isn't hearing your prayers or has abandoned you. He never has, and will always be right by your side. Give your burdens to Him and be set free. Well, let's join Pastor Ken in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, as he continues his message, Dream a Little Dream.
The Chaldean dream manuals, and we've found several of them so far, consist of historical dreams and the events that followed them, and they're arranged systematically and indexed so that you can find if the king says, I dreamt of this. Oh, yeah, that's back here in this dream. We can hear it. This is what it means, King. So they can find it. They can literally manufacture an answer by finding, okay, you dreamt this. You were naked in front of a field of sheep, and you fell, and they've got all that. They've got all that in the book. It's arranged systematically. It's indexed. We've actually found these. And these books had tried to cover every possible eventuality, and as a result, they were huge. They were long, big books. Only an expert could find his way through these things. And even he had to know the dream to begin with before he could even start searching. And this king just said, tell me the dream. Now, dreams were usually received spontaneously, and on occasion people desired communication from the divine realm could seek a dream to experience it and hear from God. This term is called incubation. Okay, it's an incubation dream. Usually the king would want one of those. He would sleep in a sacred space, and he'd kind of want to have a dream that say, "Yeah, go invade Greece." Okay, that's what he's dreaming for. It's a prophetic dream. This is the way they did it. They would dream in a special place to try and get a certain answer. He didn't do that. He was just sleeping. So he didn't go to a sacred space. He didn't have a prophetic dream. He didn't talk to anybody. But the majority of the dreams just simply came to people in the normal course of their life, okay? And that's what happened here. They didn't speak to a God. They just believed, though, that the gods were communicating through the symbols of the dream. They always believed that. And that's why he's kind of concerned about what he dreamed. So they desire interpretation of these symbols. This demand results in an accumulation, again, of these huge books about dreams. And they had them in Mesopotamia, especially in Babylon. We found them. They're also in Egypt. So you can read it in cuneiform if you want, or you can read it in hieroglyphics. It just depends upon what you want to do. You can also find other nice, wise stuff in the Egyptian language, like the cure for baldness is applying the fat of a hippo to the area that you want to grow hair. I'm not going to do it, okay? But that is in one of their books. And Moses didn't put any of that in the Word. It shows you goofy stuff that shows up in the world, and then God takes over, and it's not goofy stuff. It's just what God's Word is. So imagine this. These guys are ready to go. Oh, you got a dream? Great. Out come the books. They've got these stacks of charts and graphs and everything else. They've got their PowerPoint lined up. They're ready to start talking to the king. Okay, we're ready to do this. Tell us the dream. We're good to go. But there's a problem. He hadn't told us the dream. Could we get the dream? They're trained in diplomacy. So they asked nicely. And the king responds, and first they respond in verse 7, okay? So in verse 7, we get their response. They answered a second time and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we'll show its interpretation. We've got the books, we've got the knowledge, we've got the index, we've got the PowerPoints, we're ready to go. Just tell us the dream, king. And the king said, I know with certainty that you're trying to gain time, because now remember, he grew up, he thinks they're all a bunch of frauds. And this is where I get this from, the sense of what he's saying. I know with certainty that you're trying to gain time because you see that the word for me is firm. If you do not make the dream known to me, there's but one sentence for you. You've agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the times change. What he's saying is, you're going to keep lying to me until I change my mind and tell you the dream. He's not going to do it. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me its interpretation. Now, where's Daniel and his buddies? They're 18, 19 years old. They're not in the senior ranks of Most High Potentate Chaldean or whatever they're called. He's just a graduate of the school or just about to graduate from the school, and he's not entitled to do this. So he's not there. They don't know what's going on. They're not present, okay? So none of the kids are there, just the senior guys. Now, Nebuchadnezzar has made it crystal clear that if these are truly wise men and they are truly hearing from the gods, then they should know his dream, right? I mean, it's like calling the psychic hotline. You know, the person who answers on the other end of the line, "Hi, what's your question?" "Well, you're a psychic. You should tell me." Click. I did that once. It didn't work out real well. But this is kind of the same thing he's doing. They should know his dream. Tell it to him. Interpret the dream. You're supposed to be all wise, all knowing. Let me know. Tell me what you want. He's been mad at them in the past and then changed his mind. And this time he says, "Nah, I'm not changing my mind." So he's making sure that they understand this time is not like last time. He thinks they're playing for time. They really are. They really do. They have to have the king give them the dream before they can interpret it. They know that there's no God who could reveal the dream to them. They don't have that kind of God in their pantheon. They haven't communicated to anybody who can do that. The king's offer of many wonderful gifts and honors, hey, you can do the dream, you would do. They can't do it. If they could, they would, because he's dangling money in front of them, and these guys aren't stupid, But they can't. And they failed because they couldn't rely on their gods because their gods can't do that. So guess what the Lord's doing? Bang, your gods are worthless. Bang, so are your wise men. Bang, so are your priests. These false gods, since they hadn't generated a dream, they didn't know anything about it. And even though they didn't give the dream, should they have not been able to discern it? I mean, they are the Most High gods, right? Right? They don't know. God is doing the same thing that he did to Pharaoh. He's taking the gods down first. And in Babylon, it's very easy to do. Get all the old guys, line them all up, and then ask them a question. Tends to work real well. Again, Nebuchadnezzar's not a believer, but he's on the path to becoming one. Now, one begins to wonder if even he is questioning these gods. One of the ceremonies he was supposed to take part in every year, and he'd already done it twice, involved him going to this top of the 7-story ziggurat and then being whipped by the priest as he humbles himself in front of Marduk. I'm sure after doing that twice, he's going like, yeah, I really don't want to do this again. Maybe this guy doesn't really exist. Let's prove it. So you're wondering if he's in the same place. Again, he's in his mid-20s. He's questioning what's around him. And hey, I just conquered Egypt. I just conquered the Middle East. I'm the most powerful guy in the world. They're just questions, Verse 10. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, "We surrender." That's what they're saying. There is not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand. They're saying, we can't help you. We can't do this. Just as the king said, the king's wise men told Pharaoh, hey, this is of God, you better listen. They're telling him, they're not even saying that. They're saying, hey, we can't do this. We can't meet the king's demands, and for no great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. And they probably wanted to say, so why are you? But they didn't, okay? But I'm sure they wanted to. The thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. Weren't they supposed to have an in with the gods? They were supposed to. And what they're saying is, no, we don't. We're phonies. We're frauds. The only people that can tell you this is one of the gods. They've admitted they don't have the wisdom or the skills. Not a possible thing from aside from a God. How about the God? You think he can do it? That's what's about to happen. What he's demonstrating here with these guys doing this, and Daniel's writing it in all its glory, is that the incompetence of human resources, learning, and power to ascertain the mind and will of God apart from God's own revelations is not possible. What they're showing is that God has revealed something to the king, and only God's people, or doing it God's way, can get that information out. Not possible any other way. So we're going to learn that. This is full-grown heathenism of more than 1,000 years. These guys had the highest degrees. They had all the wisdom. They knew everything that they're supposed to know. Okay? I mean, there's probably a guy that he's talking to there in front of him who wrote a doctoral dissertation on the house of the bed at the top of the ziggurat or something like that. I mean, these guys knew everything. They were astrologers, necromancers, wise men. They did it all, but they failed. They just failed. They failed. I mean, there's nothing more to say it. Totally, completely failed. I find it remarkable that the Chaldeans never say, let us go talk to our God and get back to you. They don't say that. They never say, let's go talk to Marduk. Let's go talk to Dagon. Let's go talk to El. Let's go read let's go do something. They never do it. They fail completely. But we know somebody else is not going to fail in that comment. His name's Daniel. So what we've seen is that Nebuchadnezzar's top Babylonian advisors do not believe in the supernatural. They do not believe in revelation. Their gods don't communicate with humans. They're naturalists. They believe in only what they can see and what they can prove. Does that sound vaguely familiar to our culture today? Yeah, we're naturalists too, for the most part. We don't believe in the supernatural. We don't believe that God can speak. We have to have visible evidence. These guys are the same way. They didn't say we're going to go visit our God and find out. They can't figure it out. It's not in their book. Their worldview is not that far from the 21st century. This is the 6th century BC. It's no different than today. Same worldview, naturalistic. They did not turn to their gods. They turned to their books. But they did not have the answer, the entrance answer, which is, the dream is X. They didn't have that. Didn't know what to do. Had no idea. How do you answer a question when you don't, how do you answer a question when you don't know what the question is? How do you give somebody an answer? That's what they're being asked. They're being asked a question without being told the question. Hey, I've got a question. You know what it is? What are you looking for? That's the problem. Or do you believe that there's a God who can supply the answer? That's the question. The reply of the Chaldeans is not what the king was looking for. Their reply was not which would become part of any salary continuation plan. Okay? Their response was basically engineered, either unintentionally or intentionally, to thoroughly tick off the king. And it worked. Verse 12. Because of this, the king was angry and very furious. That's a very specific word there for furious. It's used a couple other times in the scriptures as well, and it always means uncontrollable rage. He has blown atop, and he has commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. Not the ones in front of him, all of them. He's going to kill them all and start all over again. Now, he's not going to be the last Babylonian king to think of that. There's going to be 2 more coming down the road who will do the same thing. One will actually do it. So the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed. So they're all being rounded up, and they're going to be taken out and executed. And they sought Daniel and his companions to kill him. Now, again, Daniel and his companions have been sitting back at the university. They don't know what's going on. But all of a sudden, the king's guard shows up and says, hey, we're going. You're not coming back. What's going on? So Daniel replied with prudence and discretion. Again, they've been trained in diplomacy. To Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. And he declared to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree of the king so urgent? So Arioch made the matter known to Daniel, and Daniel requested the king to appoint him a time that he might show the interpretation of the king. Now, it's good to be the king. And so if you think your advisors are frauds, let them prove it. If they can't, kill them all. That's what he's doing. And as they pled their case, they tried everything: flattery, logic, And they just made him angrier to the point where he just says, I'm going to kill them all. Their humility and their protests didn't work. Again, the word furious comes from a word that was also used of the wrath of Pharaoh, which was uncontrollable anger. I mean, he just absolutely could not get it together. Now, we're not clear if the order was go out and just start killing them immediately. We don't know if they immediately just knocked all the guys down right in front of the king. Probably didn't, especially if he had two lions there. It might have been a bit of a mess. They might want to have had lunch. But I'm sure that they're rounding them up. And they're going to be executed in front of the king. He was into that. So back on campus, Daniel and his friends, they're clueless. They don't know what's going on. Apparently the tweets coming from the king weren't working. Twitter wasn't working. Social network wasn't working. I don't know. Maybe they weren't throwing stones from the building over. Hey, head for the hills. They didn't know. So Arioch, the chief of security, is the first to let them know. And he lets them know. He stops by with the cuffs and the cart and the sword and, hey, come with me. We're going away forever. Wait a minute. What's going on? So as new graduates among the royal counselors, they had not been invited to this special meeting about the dream. So Daniel spoke to Arioch with wisdom and tact. That's what it says in the New International Version. And he did that earlier when he was doing the food thing back in chapter 1. So he's doing it again. The Lord's giving this guy really good wisdom. And he's saying the right words. And apparently he's treating these guys with wisdom and respect the entire time. So that when he says something, they listen to him. So the chief executioner stops and explains how serious the matter is. And by doing this, he's delaying his obedience and risking his own life, but they had already learned that these guys are trustworthy. For whatever reason, these guys are trustworthy. Their actions during the prior 3 years were now being used to save their lives. So, and there's another reason why Daniel and his friends are now being thrown under the bus. And we forget this. Remember what they did 3 years ago? They made a stand for Yahweh. They said, we don't want to eat the king's food. Guess who takes notice when you take a stand for the Lord? The enemy. And the enemy didn't forget where they were and who they were. And now there's an opportunity to take them out. So that's what the enemy's doing. He's going to take them out. The powers that are behind the throne have not forgotten where they are. They want them gone. They want them out of there. They had already been moved to the top of eliminate with all prejudice list, and now there's an opportunity. So that's what's happening. Now, this is not again being in the wrong place at the wrong time. First time I read through Daniel, it was just kind of like, man, this dude is in the wrong place at the wrong time all the time. Then finally, the second time I read it, I went, no, that's not the case. The Lord was behind it. There really are spiritual powers that are manipulating events to make us compromised or ineffective or, in some cases, fight for our lives. That's what they want to do. They want to kill us. We need to remember that. They don't want to just destroy our mission here on earth for Jesus. They want to destroy us. Now, when that happens, when we get challenged like Daniel is, where's our faith going to be? Are we going to be in Romans 8:28? And I check this every day to make sure it's still there. We know that all those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to his purpose. I check that every day to make sure it's still there. Really? You love me? Yep. Everything that happens in your life is because you're called to his purpose and I love you. Okay. Even with a bloodthirsty despot, Lord? Yeah, even with a bloodthirsty despot. Ecclesiastes 8:12. Although a sinner does evil 100 times and may lengthen his life, still know that it will be well for those who fear God, who fear him openly. Ezra 8:22. I was ashamed to ask the king for a band of soldiers and horsemen to protect us against the enemy on our way, since we had told the king, the hand of our God is for good on all who seek him, and the power of his wrath is against all who forsake him. So Ezra didn't ask for a guard, and the Lord protected them. Examples again of faith. I think the striking thing for me is that Daniel initiates this appointment, and he doesn't even know what this is all about. What did the king want? He doesn't know. What's going on? He doesn't know. He has no idea what's causing this. He just says, hey, can I go visit with the king and find out what's going on? Talk about faith. He doesn't even know. Or to put it in another way, how big is your God? Okay? Is it as big as Joshua's? Joshua walked with Yahweh, And then one day in the middle of a battle, he just yells, "Sun, stand still." And it did for 38 hours. So he could finish killing all the enemy. I don't have that kind of faith. Joshua did. How about Elijah? Now, he's just watched a bunch of guys jump up and down, asking Baal to take this altar and do something with it, and nothing's happened. He preps an offering, puts extra water on it, and he just asks one simple prayer, "Hey, Lord, light the match." Done. Just the next thing in his walk. That's it. By the way, at no time in the Torah is there an event that shows someone interprets a dream that was not told to them. It's not in the Bible until you get to Daniel. Nobody's ever done this. Joseph interpreted dreams. Remember, he said there's going to be drought and there's going to be, he did that. But Pharaoh told him the dream. Daniel, the young man, had seen Yahweh show up in the vegetable challenge, okay? That's it. And this is just the next step in following Yahweh. So, I love this. The drama of one man going to see the king after all the respected wise men have failed. Talk about an impact on Nebuchadnezzar. All his wise men failed, and in comes the young guy, and he says, "Hey, king, I think I can get an answer for you. Give me till tomorrow." Can you imagine the rest of the court seeing that? They know he's from Judah. They know he is one of those captives. And imagine if you're the news media sitting outside the king's palace, okay? The news media is sitting out there, and Nebuchadnezzar summons the most senior advisors. In they go. They see all these guys go in. And then they see them all come out in chains, all of them. And about an hour later, they see this young guy go in there, and then he goes out, and he's not in chains. What's going on? Talk about rumors and conjectures. It must have been interesting, because I love how David Jeremiah puts it. Daniel just walks in and says, "Hey, look, I don't need time to decipher this dream, king. Is it all right with you?" "Sure, Daniel, go ahead and do it." Essentially, that's what it did. Remember, he couldn't get these guys got nowhere with him, and Daniel just goes, "Hey, can I get a little more time?" "Sure, no problem, Daniel." So Daniel gets an evening to figure this out. So what does he do? Does he rush home to his friends and say, "Pack your bags, we're going to see how far we can run before morning"? No. He goes to his friends and he asks them to do one thing: pray. That's all he wants them to do, is pray. Do we believe God to the degree that when we pray, we expect him to answer? Daniel is praying and expecting an answer because his very life depends upon it. He has to have an answer. Verse 17, Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, and told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Notice how specific that prayer is. Seek mercy from God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that we might not be destroyed. That's it. Lord, give us mercy. Show us, help us to, what do we need to do? I mean, literally, when they say God of heaven, they're saying literally of all the heavens, in contrast to the Babylonians. They're praying to the real God. They're not. The Babylonians are not. So Daniel's first priority in this situation is prayer. He's briefed his three friends about the delay in the death sentence, and he asks for prayer for God's assistance in the dream and its meaning. That's what he wants. He wants to be able to know what the answer is. He didn't have time to look up the answer. He did not go running to the books to find out what's the answer to this dream. He doesn't.
We are so glad you tuned in to today's edition of The Unsafe Bible with Pastor Ken. For more information about this ministry and what we believe, you can find all you need to know at theunsafebible.com. Want to hear more messages from Daniel? We've got that too. Just look under the Media tab. As you've been listening to this teaching in Daniel, what are some of the things that come to mind? Has anything struck you in a personal way where you relate to Daniel? Maybe some questions have sprung up in your mind about all that's happening in this book. One thing that's a proven fact is that the things that are prophesied about in the Bible come to pass. Daniel's visions are proof of predicted events happening in history or events that will happen in the future. We'd love to connect with you about these things. If you want to connect with us, go to theunsafebible.com. Find the Connect tab and select I'm New to fill out the form so we can be in touch. If you want any more info on who we are and what we're about, you'll find that on our website as well. That's theunsafebible.com. Well, that's all we have for today. We hope you'll join us for another edition. There's so much to learn and appreciate about Daniel, a man of God who was tested time and time again, but proved over and over that his faith and hope was in the one true Savior of the world. Despite working for and serving many foreign kings, Daniel's loyalty was to God and God alone. We hope that's the case for you, too.